Hello and welcome aboard this week's edition of your maritime programme, Seascapes. First on Seascapes this week, to fish and fishing. Liam Quinlan has brought his seafood bars from deepest Kerry and recently opened a seafood bar in the heart of Cork City. We talked to Liam about our consumption of fish and the challenges that are faced by those working in the world of fishing.
I have no sea legs at all, Marcus. Growing up, Daddy had the business since 1963 and it was something we were always involved in, and I never wanted to do anything else. So when I left school, I won a scholarship with Anco at the time to Grimsby, to the School of Fisheries. It was a food science school at the time, and we had a 1-year scholarship, and there was a lad from Greencastle and one fella from Fanet and another wild man from Burton Porcher, Darty and myself. So completed that and wanted to do nothing else, of course, only come back into the business, which I did. That was in 85. Left it for a year, around 88, went to Australia with a brother of mine and came back and settled in then after that, and loved every minute of it.
Now, Grimsby was a very different place then. I mean, Grimsby was one of the biggest ports in Europe for fisheries, wasn't it?
It was thriving. We used to walk down there. We used to go to a lot of the markets early in the morning, but we used to always walk down there on the Sundays because even the local paper would have the boats that were coming, what they were expecting, and the quantities of fish were astronomical. And they were all old sidewinders, old trawlers. The fish they caught and the amount of people that was employed there at the time was staggering. But of course that, as you know now, has dwindled to, I think there's only 3 or 4 trawlers in Grimsby now landing there at the minute. Everything is imported. Well, even a lot of our own fish up to a few years ago, we would have exported 80% of what we produced. And I suppose we've turned the tables now with the advent of our seafood bars and stuff, but I'll come to that in a minute. But the distances, of course, are immense. Carseween to Killybegs is 300 miles, 301.2 miles of hard road. And you have some 10 or 15 miles of a motorway around Limerick, and the rest is hard going. Like, we have a boat landing in Killybegs now tomorrow, Saturday morning, early hours, but like it'll be bank holiday traffic up, bank holiday traffic down. It's just a nightmare. Even if you take the motorway from Limerick to Dublin, and the amount of cars and lorries that use that every day of the week, you don't have a traffic jam till you get to Dublin, and you can go about your business relatively stress-free. Whereas if you're on national roads like we are in Cork, Kerry, Limerick, you're pulling your hair out every day of the week, and it's no wonder those people have road rage and all associated factors. I suppose the market has changed quite a lot with Irish people travelling abroad, and they're experiencing all different kinds of fish, and coupled with that, we're importing quite a lot of fish, which is a shame for a country that has so much of our own fish going out that's undervalued, like Megrim. Haddock, a lot of it is exported. Monk, of course. Hake. Hake, I suppose, has only become fashionable really in the last 2 or 3 years. Whereas I know at home in Carseveen, hake would have been eaten for the last 30 years there. With all the Spanish trawlers that would have landed, people were very accustomed to it. Now, with people travelling to Spain, Portugal, Greece, whatever, they're tasting hake and stuff like that, and they want to eat it when they come home. I was out with 2 very eminent Dublin men lately, and we went to a restaurant, and when I told them the bass came from Turkey, they were amazed, because it certainly didn't say it on the menu, that's for sure. The fish was sourced locally, which it probably was, but they didn't say, they neglected to say it came from 3,000 miles away.
So what kind of challenges does that bring for you? Because obviously you eventually developed in the business into providing fish bars in your own county of Kerry, and that has proved very successful. How did that all come about for you?
That came about, I suppose we export quite a lot of fish to Scotland, and on my regular trips to Scotland, fish and chips would be one of my favourites. And I was sitting above in Peterhead one night with one of our drivers, actually Danny Murray, and I said, you know, we can do this, and we can do it so much better. Then the idea was born, and we went along and we ploughed on in 11, and we opened our first one in Killarney, and it was a runaway success. Oh my God, it was frightening. And we said, look, we can replicate it because we have the supply and we're going direct, which means we're not depending on anybody else. And then we said we'd look at Tralee, which we did, and it took off, and now here we come into Cork. Oh, certainly people are a lot more adventurous. And, well, I suppose in our own example with the seafood bars, we're making it affordable, that you don't have to pay 30 euros for a plate of John Dory or turbot. You can get it for less than 20 euros, a lobster less than 20, whitefish like haddock and hake at 12 euros. I think people are going to try it, and it's the initial hurdle. Once you get them over the line to try it, then they're going to come back and they're going to have it again.
And would you agree with me that certainly hake is a magnificent fish, and particularly the joy of most fish is if you eat fish when it's fresh, there's no experience like it, because it's it's at its best.
Absolutely, when fish is fresh, you can't go wrong with it, whether it's deep fried, grilled, even boiled, which would be the traditional way of having it. When you're fresh fish, you just can't go wrong with it. I suppose, look, in our own case, we know the ingredients, we have the chain, and we know there's nothing tampered with, and that the stuff is literally following morning. I know even today, we have crab and lobster up there from a couple of our friends in Portmagee. They were alive yesterday. They were cooked at 6 this morning. They were up here in Cork before 11. So, but I suppose they're the fellas that get no credit to fishermen. They are doing the long days, long nights, bad weather, the whole lot. And unfortunately, they're at the end of the chain. Go back to that vessel that's landing in Donegal now tomorrow night. They left port 9 days ago. There's only 5 of them on the boat. They're working around the clock for the last 9 days. They'll be in tomorrow night now, but they are tying up for a month now to get painting and stuff like that done. But normally they'll turn around in 2 or 3 days and go out again. And they're the fellas that don't get any credit at all.
Life aboard those trawlers has changed a lot with the technology. Now you've got icing facilities on trawlers that wasn't there 20 years ago, or you had to come into a particular port. But many fellas would say in the fishing business, and I hear it regularly going around the coast, is that one of the biggest difficulties for a lot of fishermen is all the rules and regulations and the amount of paperwork and the different rules, particularly given the fact that when we joined the EU, farming got the best of it and fishing didn't. And that's one of the great facts we've had to live with ever since.
Unfortunately, that's the case. And as the politicians will tell you, relative stability will not allow us to change that. Fishing was certainly sold out. And we're burdened now with regulation over regulation over regulation. And to be fair, a lot of the people on the ground enforcing it are realists. They know that a fish processing factory is not an operating theatre, and a fishing boat is a working fishing vessel, and it's not a surgical table. So they realise that, and I think people within the industry, enforcement, the whole lot, they're all kind of working together. But it's an awful tough life, and it's going to remain like that. But then the day you have a good catch, you'll forget about all the bad days. You know, if the weather is bad, there may not be cod, there may not be hake, there may not be haddock, but we will probably have whiting or plaice or monkfish or something else. And I think once you can recommend something to somebody and stand over it, then they do understand. But people's perception of fishing, I know that people would say to me often, "Oh, sure, it's raining today. There'll be no boat fishing." They don't think of the 5 metre swells that are there at all, you know, and a bit of wind. But certainly, I think people have copped onto the fact that fishermen need a decent return for what they're producing. And fish was always, I suppose, was bottom of the ladder in Ireland with regard to, certainly with pricing. Now that's changed, and I think people are realising, especially with local sourcing and stuff like that, people have to get a decent return for what they're producing. And if a fisherman can't stay in business, if he's not getting enough, he's not going to stay in business. And if he's not going to be in business, there's going to be no fish. We're going to be importing everything, and you can look at that with oil. I suppose that's where we are. You're at the mercy of somebody else then. Until such time as people really start asking questions on menus as to where is it coming from. Locally sourced doesn't do it for me. And it doesn't do for a lot of people in our industry. If you go into any restaurant, they'll tell you our beef is Irish, our pork is Irish, our milk is Irish. There's no mention of seafood, because they're buying probably bass from Turkey, salmon from Scotland. It's price, and that has got to change, because the producer, like I say, must get a decent return. And if there's people in Galway championing the Sweaty Betty now, which is the forkbeard, and fair play to them, they brought it on for a fish that wasn't mentioned 3 or 4 years ago. They're getting a price for that product now that wasn't there 3 or 4 years ago. And people are buying it. It's getting the people to eat the product first, and once they taste it, then they realise this is fantastic. Well, I suppose monkfish wasn't in the sphere at the time. It was cod, haddock, whiting, probably mackerel, and maybe smoked haddock. They were the 5 staples, for want of a better word. And monkfish was there. Some people, of course, that had been abroad in their travels realised the value of it. I know ourselves, years ago, we used to sell monk to a man up in Dublin, and the only reason he bought it was because he knew he was getting a bargain, and nobody else realised what it was, and he was able to turn it into, well, they turned it into scampi at the time, but of course there's been hundreds of dishes created with monkfish since.
Obviously, this is an exciting opportunity for you, given the fact that you've shown already elsewhere in Munster that this works.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. We think Cork, given the last 3 weeks trading, is really exceeded what we'd hoped. The choice, people, you could put your finger on nothing. There's over 20 different species in the menu. You could put your finger on not one to say cod is outselling or whatever. They're all selling the prawns, the crab, lobster, everything white, even down to whiting place. all selling in equal measures, which shows that the variation in the type of client we have coming to start with. But certainly the market is there for it. And I suppose, market research we've done quite a bit. I mean, talking to my own existing customers, and we've quite a lot of them in Kerry from Cork who would be down regularly. And, you know, they'd be saying, open a Cork. But you take that with a pinch of salt, because everybody says that to you. But it was really, when we sat down and did the numbers, we said, yes, there is definitely an opening here for it. It took us 9 months to get here. We did a lot of searching and a lot of moving. I think the economy is certainly in the up. Our price point is certainly at the races. The one limiting factor we may have is that we don't do meat. But look, we're fish merchants, and we can control. We know what's going there is 100% of the time. And once we can do that, the rest is in our own hands, you know. There's times of the year where they're fishing down here around Union Hall and East Cork and all that. You wouldn't dare venture out outside. And I suppose, look, before we do finish up, Marcus, I want to say hello to all the lads that supply us. I know this evening now, Martin Griffin is fishing, Vincent Murphy, Cathal O'Shea, Malcolm Johnson, Sean Keneally, they're all out this evening, and they'll have fish for us in the morning.
Liam Quinlan of QUINLANS Kerry Fish. Also, congratulations to the company. Their organic smoked Irish salmon was placed in the top 50 in the Great Taste Awards. You can see and read more on the Seascapes webpage.